You should start a garden. It's probably easier than you think. Before 2023, I had grown a potted pepper plant, but in 2024, I decided I wanted to go for it. My new house had a little bit more yard space. I had access to pots and soil. I was unemployed, so I had extra time, and I could not deny the opportunity. I wasn't even sure what I wanted to grow. I just wanted to try. So I went to the store and grabbed some starters. My neighbors let me go through their big bucket of seeds to pull what I wanted to. Spicy food is fun. Let's grab some peppers. I used onions in everything I cook. Let's do those. If I get too many, I can pickle them. I've really been enjoying that recently. The pickles, I love those. Why don't I get some cucumbers? Lots of flowers here, but I do think I'll have to rep the pink, white, and blue. I didn't know the growing requirements for any of these plants, so my selection certainly wasn't the most thought out. I didn't know it yet, but my patch of dirt was all clay and rock, so any plant would be fighting for survival, but especially root vegetables. I discovered this after trying to grow carrots, onions, radishes, none of which wanted to grow to their potential. A lot of my beds are very close to the house's sun-facing side, meaning they get really hot in midday, so seeds won't really germinate and leaves will cook, but they grew anyway. And that's one thing I learned while growing this last year. The sun gets hot enough to dry out leaves, the bugs will devour anything other than lawn apparently. Old seeds that haven't been stored properly have difficulty germinating, but ultimately, plants do want to grow. They learned how to turn sunlight into energy 3.5 billion years ago and have only gotten better at it since. Caring for your plants and giving them the right fertilizer and the right sun exposure and temperatures and water frequency and etc. Yes, do all help. But you can also just throw some seeds at some dirt and stand a decent chance of getting something edible. There was once a time when all these plants were foraged from the wild. The wheat planted in fields is still broadcasted the same as it would have been the first time anyone ever did it. Even if we've changed them since, we're still giving our veggies a better life than other plants in the wild get. I decided to plant last year because of the extra space and time I had, but given what I learned, I absolutely could have gone without those. The struggles I had were not struggles born of my situation's actual limiters, but of knowledge. What stopped me from growing in my previous house was the layout. I did have a small patio, but since I was in the basement level, I didn't think I would get enough sunlight. I had an indoor window seal, which also went unused for similar reasons. Looking at what I grew this year though, most of that would have fit. I wouldn't have even tried pumpkins, and cucumbers would have been possible, if tricky, but lettuce and spinach would have been so much easier. Pepper plants would have made a nice line along with any flowers and herbs I wanted. Potatoes would have been worth a shot. I could have figured out a tray for radishes. I was too nervous to grow inside back then, but now I've had great luck with indoor plants. Just recently I had to size up pots. An open field will obviously let you grow fields of wheat and corn and pumpkins you otherwise couldn't, but if all you have is a shelf in view of a window, that's probably enough to grow rosemary or basil or whatever herb or flower you'd appreciate the most. And why not try it? If it fails, you'll be able to figure out why. It'll cost like $10, absolute maximum, but if it works, you'll have fresh basil whenever you want, forever. I have the space for a raised bed and a militia of pots. During the summer heat and peak growing season, I also had the time to water every morning. You might not have those things, you might not have the space to grow a sprawling plant, but a bushing variant might work. You might not have the time to care for them diligently, but there exist lower maintenance plants and automatic waterers and tons of ways to lower that load. You might not be able to lift bags of soil or have the mobility to plant, but from what I read, most of my nearby community gardens are wheelchair accessible, which does seem feasible, though I will admit I have been too anxious to investigate in person or call anyone about anything. I certainly made a lot of errors while growing, and my planning wasn't that thorough, but I now know what to do this year. I doubt I'm going to have the time to water every morning this year, but I've also learned which parts of my house get that hot and which plants can withstand that much heat. My raised bed faces east, and so it gets incredibly hot in the summer. That's why the pumpkins and cucumbers didn't work there. The seeds were too sensitive, and the transplants already had leaves too big to withstand that heat. Having as many pots as I do was amazing, since I could easily move them around to wherever the plant responded the best. I know where my cucumbers want to be, I know how much light my front door really gets, and I have an idea of who responds best to each spot. I know not to get too greedy with flower density. I have plans to utilize my raised bed to its maximum potential. I know what plants I will actually eat, and I know how many pepper plants produce the quantity of peppers that reach my spice tolerance. I know that a couple of spinach and lettuce plants would produce greens at the rate I'd want to eat them, and I know exactly where they'd grow the best. Learning all of this took time and effort, but had I watched just a few YouTube videos in advance, that easily could have saved a bunch of those pains. A book would also work, or terrifyingly, asking someone. But now that I know this, I won't need to spend as much time watering this coming year. I won't need to spend as much time watching for pests or failing to germinate or weeding. And I know that next year will be easier because I know that last year's end was easier than its start. I only had to spend so much time watering because I didn't know any better. I only had so much difficulty germinating because I didn't know any better. I only did so many transplants because I didn't know any better. But now I do know better, and so the year will naturally go smoother. I'll have less time to spare in the garden, but that doesn't intimidate me because I know how little effort I actually need to put in. I don't need to spend that much time outside fretting over every little detail. I know the plants want to grow, and I know how to let them. Now that I know that, I don't need to budget for hours on hours. I can just do a quick lap with a watering can. I don't need to take a week off to make a plan and build new beds and fill pots and start seeds and move starters. I can just do it bit day by day. Over the course of a growing season, a week or two doesn't really matter. I don't have to do it all at once. And the occasions that I do fail are not that discouraging either. I was saddened to learn my potatoes died, but now that I know how I killed them, I'm excited to try again. I didn't lose anything either. The bucket was free, the seed potatoes were free, the soil was left over from somewhere else. You certainly can spend a ton on your beds and your starters and all sorts of bells and whistles, but you can also just not spend hardly anything. When you fail to grow a plant, the only thing you lose is a plant that doesn't even exist in the present, and you stand to gain knowledge of how to care for that plant well next time. This is the expected part. The payoff from growing your own food is amazing, as I'm sure you've heard from all sorts of people trying to advertise their lifestyle to you, but it really is. However, as I was trying to learn throughout the season, I noticed a lot of people showing off their harvest and exclaiming how much better than the grocery store their food is and how they all had far prettier plants than I did. They knew exactly how to care for them and could provide that perfect care. I had no idea what I was doing and nothing was in its ideal conditions. Maybe a gardening YouTuber whose entire job is to get pretty carrots can get a photogenic harvest, but I can't. Let me tell you about my radishes though. They were the first thing I planted, and since they grow so fast, also the first thing I harvested. I planted them in really bad soil. The rocks and clay make it difficult for the plant to hold on to water and nutrients, but it also compacts super tightly, making it nearly impossible for roots to physically expand. That's an issue for every plant, only compounded when the entire edible plant is underground. This was also my first experience with insect interference. I didn't have any idea what insect was eating the sprouts and didn't have any way to deal with it, so I just kind of had to watch them get eaten. Enough made it through that first culling that I did end up having some radish to eat. But I forgot to keep track of when I planted them and forgot to check what their signs of ripeness were. So when I decided to harvest, I maybe had overripe radishes or underripe radishes or undernourished radishes. I genuinely have no idea. And they were far smaller than I expected, probably because of the soil issues. While picking them, I could tell they had hardly anything holding them into the ground. If I entered these into a competition, grocery store radishes would absolutely beat these. I don't normally eat radishes, so I didn't even know what to do with them. I looked up some ways this variety is normally eaten and ended up slicing them thin with toast. And for as simple as that preparation was, it was incredible. My radishes were tiny. About half of them had been chewed away. I didn't even know what I was supposed to be comparing these to, but I was so proud of having made these plants myself. My harvest was small enough that I was only able to have this breakfast once or twice, but I really enjoyed it. Those plants were legitimately awful and maybe not safe to eat, but I didn't really mind. I grew them and I was proud. Measuring this on any scale, I did a terrible job growing those radishes, but eating them was such an amazing experience that I've cooked with radishes a few times since, which I have literally never done before in my life. If I did a bad job growing my radishes and still had such a transformational experience eating them, what would it be like if I succeeded? Let me tell you about my cucumbers. I started the year, got most of my plants set, and I had planned to just maintain from this point out. But I'd gotten the fever, and I just found some empty pots in the back shed, and I did have all these extra seeds lying around, so I threw in some cucumbers. I wasn't planning on growing them, and they aren't a plant I normally eat a lot of, but I had immense luck with them at the start of the season. They germinated incredibly well and loved the first wave of heat we got. They started to flower like crazy until the temperature rose again, but since I'd put them in pots and already knew how to solve this, I simply moved them over to the shade, and from there they resumed like nothing happened. They kept going and going, and soon I was harvesting. Like I said, I don't buy cucumbers, so I don't really know what to do with them. I tried to make pickles, but I'll need to look more into that this coming year. I know I can do better. But suddenly, I had a new favorite snack. Sliced cucumber, pinch of salt, splash of vinegar. I was so completely thrilled every time I got to eat one, and that high is a huge part of why I'm making this now. Not to be too hyperbolic, but those cucumbers changed my life. I'm gonna be growing food for the rest of my life because of them. Cucumbers went from okay, I guess, to this is my favorite food, all because of some dirt, seeds, and water. And because those cucumbers worked so well when I expected nothing, I'm now excited to try other plants. My cucumber was a bushing variant, so I want to try like a climbing, vining one too. And if I'm looking at plants that need something to climb on, maybe I should try tomatoes? I certainly would love them for the pizza sauce. And looking at these climbing plants, maybe beans or peas too? I don't know if I'd want to grow them by themselves, but if I attempted a Three Sisters thing, it might be worth it if just for the experience. I already know I can do one part of this family, so I'm not scared to try its siblings and cousins. And if I do fail, I know I will still have the best cucumbers I've ever eaten as a backup. In the height of summer, being outside can almost feel apocalyptic. The sun beats down incessantly, every surface radiates heat, the plants wither and scorch under siege, the only life you see is either dying or hidden away behind layers of insulation. Working in the garden like this is miserable, touching the soil, feeling it crumble beneath your fingers, cracking just like the skin on your dry hands. But then you accidentally nudge a rock, and you see the outline of where it was drawn in wet. And insects crawling to and from the surface. Seeing their tiny movements, you notice their patterns and turn back to your suffering plants and continue to see those patterns, the life always present, merely hidden from your gaze. Insects on the soil, the leaves and stems, in the turf. You pause for a moment, taking in the scene, and in this pause you notice a bird call in the distance, and then its response. Something catches your eye, a squirrel on its way home. There's a lot for someone like me to be scared about at the moment, and I don't really know what to do about, any of it. I often barely have the ability to get to work on time, after which it takes all I have to do the Sisyphean task of feeding myself. There's a lot that needs to be done, and I have no idea how to do any of it. I take an assessment of my surroundings and everything looks bad, and I'm helpless to change that. I've seen the effects of climate change worsen throughout my life, and they show no signs of slowing. I live in a city named for a lake we may not have at the end of the decade, left only with memories of its unique ecology and its dusty skeleton of arsenic and mercury. I don't know if I will soon have the legal rights over my body I deserve, given the current administration's direction. And there are vanishingly few examples I can see of the impact that I have on my world, so what am I to do? I remember sledding as a kid, playing in the banks left by snowplows, remembering each year a white Christmas. I don't have those things anymore. We don't get as much snow as we used to. Our license plates say we have the greatest snow on earth, but it hardly ever sticks around for a full day. Some days I head outside and I can't see more than a few yards away, the mountains and landmarks hidden behind the fumes of every car and factory in the valley. This isn't the home I know. Some days I put on a top and am surprised at how poorly it fits. I shave my face in the mirror and I'm surprised that I have to. My body isn't the home I expect. My house is boring and empty, walls of landlord white, dull and lifeless. Where I live isn't the home I think. It's just normal that things are this way though. I can't expect myself to actually do anything about them. Except I did grow those peppers. I can reorganize the furniture I have, I can sell and trade what doesn't work anymore, and my house doesn't have to be bland. I can make it my home. I designed my garden around its constraints to be as beautiful as I could make it, and I love my garden. I can do the same inside my home. And I did grow those radishes. They weren't perfect, but they had extremely adverse circumstances, and I loved them anyway. Maybe exactly what I want to wear won't work for me, but I've dealt with this kind of restriction before. I know how to work around this problem. It's my transition, and I can do it however I need to. I know how to. And I did grow those cucumbers. Maybe I don't know what action to take in the face of climate change, but I've seen success before when I didn't know what to do. I don't need to know every step of the way. I can just step forward and adjust my path as needed. It's so hard not to give into despair, but you are capable of taking small actions and seeing success. And when you come across something you don't think you can do, remember, the plants want to grow if you let them. In the height of summer, being outside inspires hope. The sun beats down incessantly, giving constant energy to the swelling cucumbers and peppers. The plants wither and scorch under siege, not because they're too weak, but because they've been placed outside their homes and are strategically planning to win this war. Working in the garden like this is cathartic, touching the soil, feeling its cracks beneath your fingers, preparing to take in as much water as it can, water it knows will return. All the life you see around you is constantly changing and moving, adapting to its new circumstances, continuing to live. It's more comfortable being hidden away behind chilled insulation, but there you can't see the bees wander and leaves sway, can't hear the birds call, and can't smell the flowers. I've heard that saying many times, but I always forget during winter. Each bed of soil feels different depending on its composition and hydration, and every plant's leaves feel unique. There's life in places you never realized. You have the power to choose this life and direct it and let it sustain you. You decide what plants go where and how you want your home to look and feel. I don't feel this hopeful all the time, of course. I was feeling it a lot for the first stage of script writing. It faltered a bit when I was finishing it up, and you'd have to ask editor Swine how she feels in the future. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold where anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. I'm sure she's great, though. But that's the thing. I know hope comes and goes already. My cucumber leaves suffered in the heat even as their fruits grew. I didn't know what I was doing and created more work and stress for myself. Why would that be any different outside of gardening? And it sucks and it sucks and it sucks and it sucks, but it is still useful to have my roots planted in the act of taking care of roots planted. I don't always feel that hope. Quite often it feels like having hope at all isn't a logical response. But after this year, I can always remind myself, I have cared for my garden well. I often don't see a path towards a future I want to live, but I hope that there is one. So I take that hope and plant it, and water and nourish it, and I get to eat its fruit. And since I've already planted one plant, another surely wouldn't hurt. So when you feel that hopelessness, that's my advice. Start a garden.